The following program contains politically irreverent commentary. If you suffer from an exaggerated sense of self-importance, this show might not be right for you. Check with a PhD in PC, ASAP.
Proclaiming the truth in the highways and byways of the world. Fighting for justice in the dark alleys of politics. Raising the voice of resistance to a fevered pitch. And he knows where to find the best and worst jail food in America. Randall Terry.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Have no fear. Flying Ben Bernanke and his homeboys at the Fed are cranking out money faster than you can count to $1.6 trillion. Did I say it? 1.6 trillion? No, 16 trillion. I'm tired of America so far in debt. Ain't nobody ever counted that high yet. We're going to talk to you about the economy today and how you can prepare yourself. Randall, are you going to turn us into preppers? Yes, as long as you'll put a little salt with that. But first, a quick word from my oh-so-wise friend who needs a little Botox in his lip, Rusty Cowboy.
Hey, them confounded pro-life leaders, they got all the sense of a rancher who's wondering why his cows keep on getting on a railroad track and he won't spend the time to fix his fence. Now, does the phrase dumb as a fence post mean anything to you?
Welcome to the program, friend. It is I, your servant, Randall Terry. Quantitative easement 3, back in the news. QE3, it's called for short. And baby, it looks good on you. Yeah, very seductive. What is QE3? Why does it matter to you and me? We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about inflation, and we're going to talk about ways that you can protect your family. There's a proverb in the scriptures that says, the wise man sees danger approaching and prepares for it. The fool passes on, just keeps right on going, and suffers. I don't want you and your family to suffer because of the idiocy of our federal government and the Federal Reserve, our nation's private banking institution that's in a collusion with the federal government, printing funny money. So let's do some defining of terms. Do you understand that the deficit and the national debt are two different things? Right now, our national deficit is a little over $1 trillion. The deficit is an annual number. It comes up once a year, okay? And that is the amount of money that is the shortfall between what we took in and what we spent as a federal government, okay? That's the deficit. Right now, the federal government, through all means of taxation, brings in a little bit over $2 trillion a year. But it spends a little over $3 trillion a year. So at the end of the year, we will have spent $1 trillion more than we took in. The federal government has to borrow that money from somewhere, and we'll talk about those sources. And then that trillion gets tacked on to the accumulated debt that has been accruing for decades now. That number is called the national debt. All right? So we have about $1 trillion in deficit for this year. We have over $16 trillion. 16 trillion. All right? You've got thousands, hundred thousands, millions, billions, trillions. These numbers boggle the mind. To make it personal, just to pay the national debt, each of us is obligated, including our small children, that baby born just last week, we're all obligated for around $52,000 or $53,000 for the debt. All right? That doesn't include this year's taxes. It's the money that we are all obligated to pay, like the little working mules. Just give me bread and circuses. Give me feedback that I can eat. We're all obligated, because of our leaders in Washington, the people that we've elected, we're all obligated to pay that debt. Well, right now the federal government is having trouble finding people to loan us money, all right? We're already into the Chinese for trillions, and the Federal Reserve is trying to loan money to people, or rather trying to borrow money from people, and not really pay them any interest, okay? So, wait a minute, you want me to loan you money and not pay me interest? I don't think I want to do that, or pay me some minuscule amount. I don't think I'm going to do that. And so the federal government, starved for cash, cuts a deal with the Federal Reserve that is not legally a part of the federal government and says to the Fed, could you do us a favor? Could you print money? Just crank it out, okay? Please, pretty please. And so the Federal Reserve is now printing about $85 billion a month to inject into the economy. Now, how do they do that? There are two main ways in which the Federal Reserve gets money into the economy. We'll talk about that after the break, and we'll also talk about how this is crippling our families with the cost of goods and services, particularly our food. Don't go away.
Many have accused Randall Terry and Teddy Roosevelt of riding people too hard. But Randall Terry never forced his wife to walk to the top of a mountain.
Friend, you need to get this book. We Won't Get Fooled Again. Listen to this. I came to the conclusion that most folks were left over from the Reagan era who were no longer warriors, but are now either too old or unhealthy and had compromised and become comfortable with the Republican establishment. They turned these organizations pretty much into direct mail fundraising fronts and were making tons of money and living the good life in beautiful mansions. The conservative movement had transformed itself from a very dynamic, principled organization in the Reagan years to a bunch of compromising, useless, and ineffective money-making machines. I'm reading to you from the new blockbuster book, We Won't Get Fooled Again, that names names, shows organizations, shows how they say that they're Christian, but they betray Christ, they betray biblical principles in the public square, and we are funding them. Go to the website, call us on the phone, and order it today. I'll send it to you for free if you want. God bless you. Friend, you need to get this book. We Won't Get Fooled Again. Listen to this. I came to the conclusion that most folks were left over from the Reagan era who were no longer warriors, but are now either too old or unhealthy and had compromised and become comfortable with the Republican establishment. They turned these organizations pretty much into direct mail fundraising fronts and were making tons of money and living the good life in beautiful mansions. The conservative movement had transformed itself from a very dynamic, principled organization in the Reagan years to a bunch of compromising, useless, and ineffective money-making machines. I'm reading to you from the new blockbuster book, We Won't Get Fooled Again, that names names, shows organizations, shows how they say that they're Christian, but they betray Christ, they betray biblical principles in the public square, and we are funding them. Go to the website, call us on the phone, and order it today. I'll send it to you for free if you want. God bless you.
Is this mic on? 1, 2, yeah. What? Oh, yeah. Don't go away. There's more Randall Terry to come. Yes.
Welcome back to the program, friend. By the way, for point of clarity, the federal government wants to borrow money and is borrowing money from the Federal Reserve. I misspoke in the last segment. The person who wrote the teleprompter got that messed up. So anyway, the federal government, by the way, I have to tell you this one other really critical thing. We have what are called unfunded mandates, okay? In addition to the $1 trillion in deficit, all right, that we'll have for this year, and in addition to the $16 trillion accumulated debt that we have what the government euphemistically calls unfunded mandates, okay? What are unfunded mandates? It's the money that the federal government has obligated the taxpayers to pay and certain people to receive such as in Social Security checks, in Medicare payments, in the federal drug program, all right? The unfunded mandates, money that is required by law to be spent, are over $120 trillion. The burden on every single American to pay for the unfunded mandates that are coming in the future is over $1 million per person. So if you had a grandchild born in the last year, the federal government has obligated that grandchild to fork over, in the course of his or her lifetime, $1 million for the unfunded mandates. This, in my opinion, and I believe history will prove, is criminal. It's actually criminal because the Bible says that the borrower is slave to the lender. The federal government is enslaving us and our children to debt, but also to unfunded mandates. And sooner or later, this house of cards has to collapse. Now, let's go back to the federal government borrowing money from the Federal Reserve. In QE3, quantitative easement 3, which is open-ended, it's going to go on as long as the Fed wants, the government is borrowing about $85 billion a month. All right? The government is saying, just give us this money, loan us this money. And what the government is doing is they're injecting it into the economy in two main ways. One is through federal expenditures such as the military. The other is in mortgages. So if you go to buy a house and you try and get a $200,000 mortgage, that money is borrowed money. Your local bank, with the law behind it, with the federal government and with the Federal Reserve working in tandem, that bank gets the money from the Fed, loans it to you, and then you pay it back to the bank, and the bank pays a portion of it back to the Federal Reserve. It frees up money. Now, at first blush, some of you might think, well, that's cool. Man, I wish I could print money. Yeah, the more money around, the better. Hold on. If somebody just sprinkled $100 bills all over the room, and there was still a finite number, a limited number of cars that you could buy, or clothing, or whatever it is, what happens is that the value of that money goes down because there's so much of it, and the cost of the item goes up. We are being burdened with what Congressman Ron Paul called the hidden tax of inflation. Now, I'm one of those crazy guys, crazy husbands, crazy fathers, that I do a lot of the grocery shopping in our family. I have for years. And I admit, I'm a little peculiar when it comes to retaining numbers. For example, 2 years ago, you could walk into a major grocery store and you could buy 1 pound of breakfast sausage, Jamestown breakfast sausage, for 99 cents for a pound. That same breakfast sausage today costs $2.49. A couple of years ago, you could, when we first moved here to West Virginia, you could buy a 6-pack of hoagie rolls or of hamburger buns for $2.49. That same package is now $3.99. You could buy a pound of bacon for about $3. Now it's very common to see bacon at $5 or $6 a pound. Mama's bringing home the bacon. She just ain't bringing home as much as she used to, if you know what I'm talking about. This is because the federal government is injecting billions of dollars of funny money into the economy every month. All right? And perversely, when the federal government releases CPI, the Consumer Price Index, about inflation, they use what they call core inflation statistics. And the reason they do that is because COLA, your cost of living increases, all right, cost of living allowance for people that are on, say, fixed income of Social Security. They take food and energy, your gas, they take it out of that equation. And that means that if inflation is really low, without food and gas in it, then your cost of living increase is really small. But if they had integrity and they showed how beef is skyrocketing, how pork has skyrocketed, how milk has skyrocketed, how bread has skyrocketed, how cereals have skyrocketed, they would have to have a corresponding skyrocket of the monthly checks that they're dishing out. And they can't afford that because, well, they can't borrow enough money from the Chinese to pull it off. So the people who are really hurting, the poor, are seeing the cost of their food, and they're seeing the cost of their gasoline to get to their low-paying job go up, 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 and the value of their dollar going down, down, down. I'm going to talk about two more things during this program. Got to take a quick break. We're going to talk about money. What is real money? What is funny money? And we're going to talk about what you might be able to do to prepare your family for the coming difficulties. Don't go away.
Moments with Moses. I will devastate the land, so that your enemies who settle in it shall be astonished at it.
Friend, you need to get this book. We Won't Get Fooled Again. Listen to this. I came to the conclusion that most folks were left over from the Reagan era who were no longer warriors, but are now either too old or unhealthy and had compromised and become comfortable with the Republican establishment. They turned these organizations pretty much into direct mail fundraising fronts and were making tons of money and living the good life in beautiful mansions. The conservative movement had transformed itself from a very dynamic, principled organization in the Reagan years to a bunch of compromising, useless, and ineffective money-making machines. I'm reading to you from the new blockbuster book, We Won't Get Fooled Again, that names names, shows organizations, shows how they say that they're Christian, but they betray Christ, they betray biblical principles in the public square, and we are funding them. Go to the website, call us on the phone, and order it today. I'll send it to you for free if you want. God bless you. I have no fear of the future. Let us go forward into its mysteries. Let us tear aside the veils which hide it from our eyes, and let us move onward with confidence and courage. Sir Winston Churchill. Welcome back to the program, friend. Let's talk about money. What is money? Well, one definition is it's a fungible asset. Say the word fungible, just because it's fun. What that means is it's something that you can carry around that is easily tradable for goods or services, all right? Another definition is that money is portable labor, transferable labor. You can buy someone's goods or services. They labored, they brought in a watermelon, or they brought in wheat, and they made bread out of it, and you buy it. You're buying the time of their labor to plant and to grow crops, or to make an automobile, or to fix your automobile, all right? Money is portable labor. So when you give an organization money, by the way, you're giving what? The fruits of your labor, all right? When you give money, you're giving the fruits of your labor. Money is portable labor. But perhaps a more critical question is, what is money? I mean, literally, what defines money? Now let's take a quick look at funny money and real money. This piece of money, and Gary, if you could shoot that, that's a $100 bill. Where you been? That $100 bill has no intrinsic value. All right, I'm going to come back to that. This, on the other hand, is a 1-ounce piece of silver. This has intrinsic value. If the United States of America ceased to exist next week, and you went to Brazil, or you went to London, this 1 ounce of silver would be able to purchase food or clothing. If you took this $100 bill and the U.S. ceased to exist, it would have all the buying power of Confederate money. After the end of the Civil War, it would be worth nothing. And by the way, you would not want to use it for any bodily functions because it's too sharp and too uncomfortable. So, this $100 bill, all right, it has value only because when you give it to somebody in exchange for goods or services, they have confidence that they will be able to give it to someone else for goods and services. It works strictly on confidence. When the confidence is gone, or God forbid that the government should cease to exist, then the value of that piece of paper will be gone with it. Silver and gold, on the other hand, have intrinsic value, I believe, because God has decreed it. It has been that way since the dawn of time. Throughout all human history, silver and gold have had intrinsic value. And to this day, you can take a 1 ounce gold piece and you can go buy a really nice suit of clothes, a really good dinner, a good night on the town. And in the year 1900, that 1 ounce of gold would have done the same thing. A really nice suit of clothes, pair of shoes, and a really good dinner and a nice night on the town. All right? $20 gold piece then, $20 bill back then would have done the same thing. But your $20 bill today won't even buy two of you a good meal at Denny's. Never mind clothing, never mind shoes. And so one of the things that you and I can do to prepare for disaster, for inflation, is to set aside a little bit of our money in what are called precious metals, either silver or gold. And right now, by the way, silver is a bargain. All right? You can get an ounce of silver for in the low 30s. And if the manure hits the fan, you might see that silver climb to 40, 50, 60, 70, $100 an ounce is what a lot of specialists are predicting over the next 12 to 18 months. So I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, a little bit more discussion about preparing for your family's safety. Don't go away. O Lord, thou God of vengeance, shine forth. Rise up, O judge of the earth. Render to the proud their deserts. O Lord, how long shall the wicked exult? Friend, you need to get this book. We won't get fooled again. Listen to this. I came to the conclusion that most folks were left over from the Reagan era who were no longer warriors, but are now either too old or unhealthy, and had compromised and become comfortable with the Republican establishment. They turned these organizations pretty much into direct mail fundraising fronts and were making tons of money and living the good life in beautiful mansions. The conservative movement had transformed itself from a very dynamic, principled organization in the Reagan years to a bunch of compromising, useless, and ineffective money-making machines. I'm reading to you from the new blockbuster book, We Won't Get Fooled Again, that names names, shows organizations, shows how they say that they're Christian, but they betray Christ, they betray biblical principles in the public square, and we are funding them. Go to the website, call us on the phone, and order it today. I'll send it to you for free if you want. God bless you.
Torn from a world of tyrants beneath this western sky, we formed a new dominion, a land of liberty. The world shall own, we're masters here, then hasten on the day. Huzzah, 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 for free America.
Welcome back to the program, friend. There are people who have insurance policies on their car, on their home, on their jewelry. They have health insurance. And as far as I know, nobody really wants to collect. All right? I don't buy my car insurance hoping, man, I hope I have a wreck. Boy, I hope my house burns down so I can weep and grieve because I lost all my family photos, but I get a new house. No, no, no. You have it in case of a disaster. You don't want the disaster. And some of those same people mock those who have an insurance policy against the devaluation of the dollar, against a really severe economic collapse. Let them mock. But if you're prudent, you will have the 5 B's. Now, some people will say 3 B's or 4 B's. I'm giving you 5 B's. Ready? Bible, bread, bandages, bullets, and bullion. The 5 B's. You want your Bible. You want to keep your ethics and your faith squarely on the eternal truths of the Word of God. That's self-explanatory. Next is bread, food. You should slowly but steadily store up food that your family can eat in a crisis. There's a lot of good stuff out there. Make sure you've got 2,000 to 2,200 calories a day per person, and hope you never need it. And rotate it. Some items you can buy will last for several years. Some you can buy will last for 20 years. Wheat will last indefinitely if it's stored properly, okay? So if everything went to hell in a handbasket, it'd be good if you had some food that you could eat, don't you think? Bullets. Well, bullets are so that you can kill deer and eat venison or kill a wild boar. And by the way, if you have a lot of food stored up and you don't have bullets, you become a food pantry. I call them IFPs, involuntary food pantry, for the bad guys. Bullets are important for self-defense. Bullion, gold and silver, because if this Ben Franklin collapses, you'll still be able to buy some of the items that you need. And then finally, you've got to have bandages, because if you've got some healthcare needs that emerge, you certainly want to have the items that you would need to keep your family from getting too sick. I'm out of time. We will talk about this again. Go to voiceofresistance.com and watch it. Write down the 4 Bs and prepare. You owe it to yourself and you owe it to your family.